and welcome to episode 155 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And hey, I'm James Whittingham. Welcome to the program. Ukraine this week builds a wind farm while Russian bombs explode in the distance. Putin has had a hard time bombing them because they're spread out and because he thinks they're just a bunch of fun pinwheels.
James's hero, President Joe Biden, has approved new oil production in Alaska, causing James to rethink his entire life in the pause before the next joke.
Damn it. Semi-transparent solar panels seem to help greenhouse plants grow better, while semi-transparent fashions of the Oscars helped grow my ever-aging, almost dead libido.
Saudi Aramco has just recorded the largest profit ever for an oil and gas company. The state-owned oil company may face a public relations backlash. So to put a friendly spin on this, the king of Saudi Arabia has agreed to star in a reboot of the Beverly Hillbillies.
And also on this week's show, the future of a gas station that can be an exciting one. Proof if everyone in your neighborhood went electric, there'd be less cases of asthma in your neighborhood. And
I bought a car, a brand new car, a Chevy Bolt. I bought a car, I bought a need to enjoy. I bought a car, no more complaining to Brian every week on the show. I bought a car, a Chevy Bolt, let's go on now.
all that and more on this week's edition of the Clean Energy Show.
Well, I hope you'll be releasing that as a single. That's
absolutely.
That's
Trump's going to get knocked off the top of the
production.
charts. And yeah, it's coming out. It's
Wow.
coming out. We'll use the funds for
That's
our
amazing.
Learjet.
I want to get started with Brian's Movie Corner.
Brian's Movie Corner.
James, I want to talk to you this week about an exciting new documentary called All That Breathes.
I talked about that.
Yeah, but that's James's Movie Corner. Nobody cares about that.
But
This is Brian's Movie Corner.
I release songs, Brian. Hit singles. I'm a hit maker. All right. What did you think of the film?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I thought it might win because it seemed to me like a real filmmaker's film.
It did.
Like it's about an amazing subject, which are these guys with a bird rescue in Delhi, in this, terrible polluted city. But the filmmaking was just so ridiculously good. Like usually the problem with the Oscar-nominated documentaries is that it's often like a really worthy subject matter, but the filmmaking is just kind of ho-hum. Like the filmmaking is just kind of average, and some director just kind of stumbled upon a really fantastic topic, and a great topic can still win the Oscar for best documentary. But this, I was just blown away. It's more like a poetic art film than a documentary. Like the cinematography is just incredible. And, usually when you make a film, you go out and you shoot, a couple hundred hours of footage, and then, you cut up like a couple of thousand shots into the movie to kind of put it all together. This was so much more sparse. Like they used all these long takes, very unusual style for a documentary. Yeah, I just thought it was fabulous. It's maybe not like if you're looking for a hard-hitting climate documentary, this is maybe not it, because it's really more like a meditation on nature in the city.
But it sure hits home, doesn't it? I mean, it still makes the point.
Yeah, it still does make that point, but it does it in just an absolutely beautiful way. So I've forgotten the name of the director, but whoever he is, he's a genius.
Yeah, he shot for 6 months, sort of a verite style.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, so verite would be like handheld style, which is a typical documentary style where you just run around with a handheld camera and you catch a bunch of stuff. And yeah, he said on that interview on The Business that they shot for 6 months in that style and then threw all the footage away and started over. And they switched to like a slow, like dolly shots and tripod shots. And it takes real guts to do that, like to just throw that footage away and start over. But, totally paid off. I do think filmmakers might appreciate it more because a filmmaker is going to kind of see how ridiculously difficult that would have been to make. But bravo.
Yeah, I'm sure he spent 18 months or something like that with them. And like I said, 2 episodes ago when I watched it, yeah, they were around so much that the subjects of the film, these brothers who helped these birds since they were teenagers, the majestic kite, they forgot that the filmmakers were there. And from what I understand, it was just a cinematographer. So the cinematographer operated the camera and set up the equipment, and the documentary filmmaker, director. So it was a small crew in a small place. And, Brian, I was thinking maybe they couldn't have made that before our current technology, because you'd have to set up lights for film. If you were shooting on 35, you couldn't shoot that much film. There's no way. There's no way that they would have caught, a bird coming down and stealing one of the subject's glasses from a terrace. There were so many remarkable moments that they just had to be there from, the amount of hours that were chopped down to this that you would have had to have realistically been shot.
And they still managed to keep the story all together. So, there are sometimes important things that the subjects in the documentary say, and they somehow managed to preserve all that without chopping it up with a million shots. Like, there's all these kind of long takes, and they still include like all the information that you need for the film. Now, I will say it did not win the Oscar. Navalny won the Oscar, which you had also seen and said was good. I haven't seen it yet. I just wanted to do a quick Oscar recap because we talked about some of these things a little bit. Navalny was directed by a guy from Toronto, so Canadian director on that film.
And guess who won Best Adapted Screenplay?
And Best Adapted Screenplay went to Sarah Polley, the great Canadian filmmaker who we mentioned on the show a couple of months ago.
Friend of the show, practically.
Nominations came out.
Practically a friend of the show.
Practically a friend of the show. And then Brendan Fraser, of course, is Canadian as well. He won the Oscar for Best Actor, spent some of his childhood in Saskatoon.
Did he? I didn't know that.
And I think we've even mentioned it before on the podcast because you didn't believe me then either.
Well, why would we even talk about him? Why would we even talk about him, Brian?
I don't know. I feel like it came
all these people have sort of revised their careers, sort of come out of obscurity, which is always a story that I love because, dare to dream. It's nice when that happens. So
no, I've always loved Brendan Fraser in all the films he's done. He's a great actor. And I just have an affinity for him because he's Canadian and spent part of his childhood in Saskatoon, which is near us.
Let's get to the fact that I've bought a car.
Congratulations.
After the show, I signed the papers I go into the back room at Chevy and either walk away if they try to sell me an undercoating and leave. So I'm worked up and in a bad mood about that possibility. But anyway, they're trying to sell me a warranty, thinking that it's a good idea because the radio only lasts 3 years. If I have to buy a warranty for a car, maybe I shouldn't be buying that car. The Chevy Bolt, I quite like it. I've spent some time in it, and I haven't really spent much time in it. They really did a hell of a job rebooting that car a couple of years ago for the second generation of it. I mean, it's really nice. It's small, though. It's smaller than the Prius. And the Prius driving the Prius now after the test drive yesterday, it's big and utilitarian and clunky and awkward. And, it starts awkwardly. Well, all gas cars will start awkwardly when you're used to an electric car. This has fake leather stitching on the dash, and it's soft and a huge display that's very responsive, unlike Volkswagen and some other people. And what happened is that somebody in town here ordered the car 5 months ago. I'd put a pre-order in one, and just now, so it would have taken almost 5 months to get here, probably August, September, at the rate that they're going. This one sat in a rail yard in Edmonton, Canada for a month, apparently, before it just got stuck there. They said the oil companies are getting priority on the rail lines because they have more money.
What? That can't possibly be. That's so absurd. It can't possibly be true.
They said they don't understand why their cars are sitting in places for a month in Winnipeg and Edmonton in the rail yards. And
so it's not just electric cars.
Oh,
it's
no.
all cars.
No, it's not just electric cars. It's all the vehicles. They don't sell very many electric cars.
Because that would be a breaking news.
I now understand why you're upset, why you were confused by that. So somebody canceled their order because they have become pregnant, or probably a younger couple have become pregnant and decided they needed a bigger car. I don't think they do. If this car was a half-inch wider, I'd be okay. But, it's fairly tall. You sit tall in it. You sit taller than the Leaf. The Leaf is quite a bit bigger overall, and so is the Prius, of the two cars that we own. But it's pretty good, and there's it's got an electric driver's seat, a power driver's seat, so that's really nice. That's something that's usually not included. There's lots of things. I'm looking forward to Android Auto, Apple CarPlay type of stuff.
Yeah.
The nicest thing about it that we're one of the only people where we live who doesn't have remote start in our car because it was tricky for the Prius for some reason. So now you can just use the fob, the key, to start the car. And, well, it doesn't
Nice.
start it. It just turns on the heater or cooling. It sets it to room temperature
Sure.
if it's hot in the summer or cold in the winter, and it stays on for 20 minutes. And the heater in that thing, Brian, is pretty impressive. I was boiling hot within 2 minutes. Like, it just really works
Yeah.
well. And
So you've had the test drive, but you don't have possession yet.
we basically have possession, but because we were pre-approved for financing for a different model for the EUV, which is slightly larger. Not much on the inside, but mostly just for styling on the outside. I much prefer the styling of the EUV because this looks like a dinky hatchback, and the other one looks. But this does have, we needed once we got the numbers, we needed to save every penny we could because it's a lot of money and it's stretching our monthly budget. We factor in the gas savings and all that. So what I'm going to do with the Prius, what we did, we haven't sold the Prius yet. So what we did is we called an audible this morning. Early this morning, we accessed our line of credit from our newly renewed mortgage at a different bank. Found out we did have one ready to go and got a check. So the check is for the minimum that I'll get for the Prius, and we're going to put that down as a down payment so that we're paying less interest. If we did keep it for the full period, it would be saving us $3,000 of interest. And then I found a great place in Regina I had a wonderful conversation with called Rev Automotive. They just built a brand new building in the warehouse district. It's a really nice building and really nice people to talk to. And they said, I told them I had a podcast and we should have a conversation because they want to specialize in electric vehicles, used electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles.
Yeah.
But I talked to the general manager, and he said because it's Regina, we deal with a lot of gas cars because of where we live in oil country and sort of rural Canada. And yeah, but they're great people. They understand everything. They understand my desire to have a Bolt, and they're very upfront with how to sell a car and the accident damage and how that depreciates the value. And it's all very interesting because we did hit wildlife with it in Wyoming, and it was more than $7,500 damage. So that some banks won't finance a used car for that much, but some will.
Wow.
So they'll just have to work their way around that. So I'm going to get them to consign it and sell it for me, and they'll take about 10%, around $2,000 roughly, if it sells over $20,000.
Sure.
And I'm hoping to get. One of the reasons we're buying the electric car is because the value is really high, and they said they're starting to come down. The used car value is starting to come. So now's the time to jump on this opportunity. So I think I might be actually kind of lucky that this car showed up. And, it's really well appointed. It's got everything you can imagine. You can use your voice to change the fan setting. You can, if you've got parking beeps so you don't bump into anything, you've got a little picture of a pedestrian that pops up. Your windshield lights red if there's a pedestrian or a car in front of you. Like it shoots red on the window. And so it's got kind of neat little, it's fully, it's modern. In short, it's just what a modern car tends to have these days. The seats are quite comfortable. They were deal breakers in the past generation of Bolt. They were terrible, absolutely terrible. For everybody, everybody who wasn't had the figure of a 2x4. Though some of those people online said, it's okay, but they literally were about the size of a 2x4. But anyone of normal size or certainly jumbo size like myself didn't care for them, and my wife didn't like them either, and she hated them when we tried them out from a friend's EV at one of the local EV shows. And Brian, like I said last time, the guy who's selling us the car, I found him on Reddit. First of all, he was suggested to me on Facebook about a year ago. But since then, somebody on Reddit said, hey, go to this guy. He just bought one in November. So he owns the car. I'm just blown away by that. So he actually still this week is coming up with things that I wasn't aware of. And he can answer the situation questions that I have, like if you're this far away and it's, 30 degrees below zero, what happens? And, he says nothing. It just works. It gives you a propulsion system reduced, but he said he never found that anything was actually reduced. He never noticed it. He drives on the highway to his rural home. And so, and he also told me that Canadian Tire had a free level 2 charger, but they took that away. It was part of the Flow charger there. Canadian Tire is like the Canadian Kmart. I would have went there, just charged while I shopped my Leaf. So we'll see how it goes. I'll talk about the experience next week, and I need to come up with questions, audience. I need to come up with stupid EV questions that my wife is going to have to answer at her work. Okay. So how long does the battery last? Does it work in winter? How much does it cost to replace the battery? these are all the questions. So if you could think of any, email us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Brian, I know you got a few from people coming up to you in parking lots. So we'll compile some for next week.
Sure. And I'm just kind of curious about the Bolt. It sounds like it's like lots of cool features. That's great.
I'll come by and pick you up sometime or go for a spin. If you have some time, we can do that. Yeah. So Bjorn Island, the Norwegian YouTuber, one of the pioneers of electric vehicle YouTubing, Brian. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Bjorn from Norway.
Tesla Bjorn is what I think his handle is. And, he's been doing this for a long time. He does extensive tests. He sleeps in his car. He does crazy things like that. Mm-hmm. But to his credit, he's building his second new house off of YouTube revenue. So he does well. He popped in and did this little video at a Circle K gas station that was built from the ground up to be an EV charging station. So this, Brian Stockton, is a gas station of the future. This is how I see gas stations in town. But this is particularly great. And there's some things that, it's a great place. It's built to stay. It's got tables. It's got little cafe in it. It's got, there's lots of things you can buy at a Circle K anyway, like, food that you can warm up and hot dogs and things like that. And various, coffees.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the picture, and where the chargers are looks exactly like
it's
a
under
gas
a canopy.
station. Like at first glance, it's under a canopy just like a gas station. So at first glance, you would think, oh, those are gas pumps. But no, it looks like, six chargers lined up where 6 gas pumps would be.
I think there's 2 sets of those and 1 set of gas pumps. So it's, that's really cool.
So there is still
gas pumps, but not as many because it's Norway, where if you're new to the show, 90% of new vehicles have a plug in them. And it's been like that for some time now. So because of incentives and de-incentives. So, and that canopy, it was raining at the time and he said, hey, this is great. Why should an EV driver get a canopy? The damn gas drivers are only there for a minute and they get a canopy.
Yeah.
So fair is fair, people. And also, the canopy has solar panels on it. Now, solar panels on a canopy at a gas station is not going to power all the vehicles that charge there, but it's something. It's, you're not wasting the space. It's being used for at least solar. I would like to see a bunch of solar put up around on racks or something around the place as well, but no one's ever done that yet. And I thought this was genius, and I'm mad at myself for not thinking of it. They've got a vacuum cleaner there. So if you're sitting there charging for 20 minutes even, it's like, hey, I'll vacuum the vehicle. If I'm bored, why not use the opportunity? That's a great idea. And another thing.
That's
brilliant.
It's weird no one thought of that because you would never put one next to a gas pump because you're just not there.
But you can't have electricity next to a gas pump if you ask my relatives.
And that too, yeah.
Yeah, and little that's just going to make extra money, right? Because people are going to throw their coins in there or whatever, and unless it's offered as a convenience, but also, and this is a little thing, windshield wipers, like squeegees, we call them in North America. Something to clean your windscreen with some water. They put them just in a loose bucket over there rather than in a container that mounts on the wall like we have. So, and then sort of things like paper towels and napkins and things like that.
Yeah, some of the EV chargers I've been to have a squeegee for your windshield, but most do not.
Who had those? Did somebody, a user, just put those there for the goodness of their heart or what?
No, I think like the co-op station in Davidson has one, I think. So that's probably the gas station itself put it there.
Well, then that was a brilliant. Another hats off to the gas station, the co-op gas station, Riverbend in Davidson, Saskatchewan. Hello.
They're the best.
And still waiting for an EV charger so I could take my Bolt to see my son when necessary. Because I'm getting those questions like, can you go to Saskatoon? Can you go to Saskatoon in the winter? Things like that.
Yeah. As soon as the charger's open in Davidson, then you can.
So my son was a bit disappointed that when I showed him the charging stops required for a Bolt on a Calgary trip, because it was like an hour and 15 minutes in Medicine Hat. He said no one wants to spend an hour and 15 minutes in Medicine Hat. And not even Brian.
No offense to all of our listeners in Medicine Hat, which is a real place.
It is. Yeah. So it's got a battery backup system here on that place. So, if everybody charges at once, it doesn't take down the grid. It's got sort of batteries to augment that. It's got a seating area upstairs as well, so you can go up the stairs and even on a terrace if it's not raining. And the most important thing that Bjorn said was, it's got clean bathrooms, easily accessible, and it's got a place to sit if you need to, if you want to. I'm sure it's got Wi-Fi as well. So, and phone chargers at the seats. So you can charge your phone if you're inside. I think that's nice, and I think that is the future of charging. And I wish more people, well, it happens first in Norway, people, then it comes to the rest of the world. So hopefully that comes here, because that would be a nice place to visit.
Yeah. What's that expression? So goes Norway, so goes the world.
Sure, they say that all the time. Never go a day without hearing that.
That's an expression.
So Riverbend Co-op, since we're talking about you should look at the video. A little bit of seating, upgrade the food maybe a bit, make sure your bathrooms are A1, and squeeze
vacuum cleaners by the chargers.
By the charger. What a brilliant idea. I'm so mad I didn't think of that myself, because I'm going to start my own charging network, Brian.
Okay, so Joe Biden, who just last week James was saying is such a wonderful guy and the clean energy guru of the 21st century, has approved an oil project in Alaska for more new drilling. So it is this is going to allow for 3 drill sites in the National Petroleum Reserve on Alaska's North Slope. ConocoPhillips is developing it and has said that it'll include around 219 wells and can produce as much as 180,000 barrels of oil per day.
Yay!
So
we need more oil, Brian. Maybe he just wants them to go bankrupt by drilling in all these places. By the time they get it done, there will be no need for it. Because there's all kinds of stories this week about the peak of combustion engine sales. Like, Bloomberg thinks it peaked in 2017, and they're pretty damn sure about that. Yeah. That it's not coming back.
Yeah, well, this story is from Electrek, and of course, you know the old saying, never read the comments, but Electrek has started putting this thing where they include top comments in the sort of body of the story. Yeah, there's quite a good one here. It's by a guy named Kojak, and he says, I understand why people are disappointed, but the problem is that there is still demand for oil. That's the real problem. So the faster we can transition to clean energy and take away the demand for oil, then, this could end up to be, something that doesn't end up producing 180,000 barrels of oil if we can keep the demand down. Now, I think the other argument would be that there's probably enough wells, there's enough pipelines, there's enough infrastructure already to supply our needs, and we just sort of go down from here. But, this is the problem. We had talked about a similar thing here in Canada. We have an environment minister who is a, longtime climate activist before he got into politics. And he did the same thing. He approved an oil project in Eastern Canada in the Maritimes. And, it must have killed him to do that. Probably they shouldn't. Biden probably shouldn't have done this. But we are still using oil. People are still gassing up their cars all over the world. It's where we are at this moment.
Sad, but that's a good point. It's a good point. We need to end the need for it. And, hopefully that's the case. Right now, there's a huge wait for EVs. Except for Tesla. Tesla's actually pretty short. So, but everyone else, there's a wait. Like if I wanted a Volkswagen ID4, I'd probably have to wait 18 months at least. And, by the way, the guy at the dealership said that, all the new GM vehicles that are coming, they said there's already a year wait. So they're coming out in a year. Wow. Then there's a year wait after that, he said. Yeah. And I'm not even sure they're looking for orders at this point. That's too bad, because if the demand is not going to go down, Brian, as the neighbor effect goes on and as people get more accustomed to these things. And, he said the misinformation is a big factor, that people don't understand EVs. Especially where we live, and that's probably true everywhere. But since we live in a very cold climate, that's another bunch of factors that people worry about. But I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to a cold day with this baby, because it's a heater.
Yeah, is it a heat pump heater?
He keeps calling it a heat pump, but it's not a heat pump. It's just it heats a fluid loop. So
okay,
yeah, there's no heat pump in that, but we'll see how it goes with range consumption and all that. I love it too. It's got an automatic setting where you can control the fan speed. You can say, when I hit auto climate, it's not going to blast the fan and use up the battery at really high speeds. So you can have it at a low speed, which is a really good idea, actually. It's one of those things that EV drivers know about. leave you owners know about. Brian, from the Washington Post and Power Magazine, Ukraine, to my shock and surprise, we've had bits and pieces of what their renewables are in Ukraine, because some of them have been bombed already early in the war. And obviously, electricity is a huge issue there. Power, they've been bombing the infrastructure so that Ukrainians freeze. And thankfully, it was a mild winter. Not that it was an easy winter, but it could have been much worse. People could have died. And God knows Putin would have liked that. So there's a wind farm that proceeded. It stopped at the beginning of the war, but then it proceeded. And it was defying Russians' assault. Ukraine has completed this portion of a 114 megawatt wind farm. In the spring of this year, 19 Vestas 6 megawatt wind turbines, this is onshore obviously, will begin to generate 114 megawatts of electricity. And then these are built on sites peppered with bomb shelters and under the wail of air raid sirens. The workers have bravely continued. The workers have bravely continued the work on this. They've been brought online under some of the most challenging conditions anywhere in the world, just 60 miles or 100 kilometers from the front lines of the war. That's really close. And when the war started, this is a quote here from the CEO of the company doing it. When the war started and the focus was on how we were going to survive, we did not know what we would do with this huge construction project. Then early wins with our army made it clear that victory was not in doubt. So basically, they thought they were going to win the war, so let's continue. Let's continue building. And it was just a matter of time. So we made the decision to continue building. The project is in the Mykolaiv region. It's now helping to generate electricity for the area's beleaguered residents and the broader power grid, which is great for them. They really need it. The plan is for it to ultimately grow to several dozen turbines, creating enough energy to power as many as 500,000 homes. And foreign contractors involved in the project were unable to send their workers into the war zone. So that's not what foreign companies do. Meaning Ukraine needed to work with the companies that they already had inside the country to train local teams to do much of this work. So this is an adaptation to Mr. Putin's aggression. We had to create an entirely new approach to construction, the CEO said. It was wintertime. We had air raid alarms going off. It was not like we could work a normal schedule. They had to stop working and stuff like that. The transition toward cleaner power was already underway before Russia invaded, with Ukraine's aging coal infrastructure and depleted coal mines becoming obsolete and an impractical investment. As Russia relentlessly targets the country's electricity infrastructure, these types of clean power sources can be more resilient than fossil fuel plants, which are more compact and vulnerable to targets. So these installations are harder to destroy with missiles, said an associate professor of finance at the University of Illinois. He's an expert in Ukraine energy. They are more spread out, these wind turbines, than say, like a nuclear power plant or a coal power plant. It is harder to knock them offline. Even if you knock a wind turbine or some solar panels out, there are still others standing, of course. So the solar panels in the village of Trifonivka are powering a makeshift transmission line while engineers work to rebuild the local power station, which was completely destroyed. The solar panels are bringing electricity to a community near the front lines that might still be in the dark had it been reliant on gas or a coal plant. I thought that was very timely and interesting.
And it's really remarkable how much this war has been a story about energy.
Isn't it crazy?
Like it's crazy.
It's just, it's really remarkable. And it's not what the jackass wanted to accomplish when he invaded Ukraine. It's the opposite. So, haha.
And as we seem to do every week, congratulations to Vladimir Putin for accelerating clean energy once again.
We should give him a medal.
Okay, so Saudi Aramco. So this story is from The Guardian. Saudi Aramco registered a $161 billion profit in 2022. This is the largest profit ever recorded by an oil and gas firm, related in some ways to the war we were just speaking of. Of course, energy has been in short supply this year and prices have skyrocketed. And Saudi Aramco, being the largest oil company in the world, and they have some of the cheapest oil in the world. It's very easy for them to pump a lot of it. And so they've ended up with these absolutely insane profit levels, which is not good. because this, of course, incentivizes this kind of behavior to
It
continue.
incentivizes more BS too, more greenwashing, more propaganda, more, trying to derail renewables progress because, hey, look at the money we're making. And I feel like that's ramped up with all the profits that have come out lately.
Yeah, well, and maybe I'll just move on to another story that I was going to talk about here, which is in the same ballpark. This story comes from PBS. It is former GOP Ohio speaker and lobbyist guilty in a $60 million bribery scheme. And this has to do with the power utility in Ohio. So former state House Speaker Larry Householder,
not for long,
strange name, and no, not going to be a householder much longer. And former Ohio Republican Party Chair Matt Borges were convicted this past Thursday in a $60 million bribery scheme that federal prosecutors have called the largest corruption case in state history. A jury in Cincinnati found the two guilty of conspiracy to participate in a racketeering enterprise involving bribery and money laundering, and each of them faces up to 20 years in prison. So they allege that Householder, 63, orchestrated a scheme secretly funded by First Energy Corp to secure his power in the legislature, elect his allies, and then pass and defend legislation that delivered a $1 billion nuclear power plant bailout to the Akron-based electric utility First Energy Corp. So the gist is here that a few years ago, Ohio started moving towards clean energy, and this was reflected in their laws. They were starting to pass laws that were, more favorable to clean energy and less favorable to the old power schemes. But then the utilities realized, oh crap, we're losing money. We're going to be losing even more money. And so, they all worked together to get this guy elected, and so that they could change the laws. And it worked for a little while until they got arrested. And
I hope the people who did the bribing are arrested and convicted too, not just the dirty politicians who got caught. I want the energy companies to pay too.
So far, it's the two politicians that are going to jail, but yeah, perhaps there'll be more charges and more people come down from this. But yeah, it just shows you exactly what is at stake here. There's so much money involved in electric utilities around the world that I guess the temptation is there to just change the laws and keep the money flowing to these old incumbents with dirty power.
Yeah, let's catch more of them because the taxpayers are getting hit with this, ultimately. Brian, an interesting story on electric, if you don't mind. I thought this was fascinating. There was a legit university study where they put transparent solar panels on a greenhouse roof and to see how it would affect the plants. And what happened was the plants actually grew better, not worse, not acceptable, not maybe a little worse, but acceptable, which is what they might have been hoping for. But they actually grew better.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of solar panels are essentially semi-transparent because the actual solar cells don't cover the whole cell. So you can put them on something like a roof of a greenhouse, and a lot of the light, I didn't say how much, but maybe half the light still gets through the roof.
Well, this is a little bit different because they're a different kind of solar cell. I'll just read it to you. In an agrivoltaic study, UCLA engineers put a semi-transparent solar roof on a greenhouse, and some unexpected things happened. At the School of Engineering, they designed semi-transparent organic solar panels that can absorb energy from the sunlight without blocking the light that the plants need. So this is very different than a normal solar panel letting through light onto agriculture. This is made with a different substance, and it absorbs just the light that the solar panel needs. This is bloody amazing if this can be commercialized because, the scale that this could do would be just, amazing. So the study, Achieving Sustainability of Greenhouses by Integrating Stable Semi-Transparent Organic Whoa, that's a hard... I got to start again. Sorry, YouTubers. The study, Achieving Sustainability of Greenhouse Gases by Integrating Stable Semi-Transparent Organic Photovoltaics, was published last week in Nature Sustainability.
Okay, you got to start. You got to start again because you said greenhouse gases instead of just greenhouses.
Oh, bloody hell. The study, Achieving Sustainability of Greenhouses by Integrating Stable, Semi-Transparent Organic Photovoltaics, was published last week in Nature Sustainability. And my mouth usually does not do aerobics like that, but I got through that. The research team's organic solar cells rely on carbon-based materials instead of inorganic substances used in conventional solar devices. The crops in the greenhouses with the organic solar roof grew more than the crops in the regular greenhouse. The scientists believe, Brian, that happened because the God help me, the L-glutathione layer blocked both ultraviolet rays that can inhibit plant growth and infrared rays that can cause greenhouses to overheat, thus causing the plants to need more water. So they don't need more water, they don't overheat, and they still get all the light that they need, the right kinds of the light, and the rest goes to the PV, electricity production.
That's quite remarkable. So just a change in what the solar panels are made of, and it might be just the right tweak to, increase production.
So
That's
there's
amazing.
no word on the cost of what these will be and if they can be mass produced, or how long that will take. But, sometime in the future, even if it's 20 years, that's pretty exciting stuff to see, because you could, greenhouses is something that excites me, locally produced foods, fresh foods, and pesticide-free and disease-free food, like eating romaine without the risk of cow poop being on it from a runoff in California is very appealing to me.
Yeah, we're going to see much more, I think, local agriculture in greenhouse situations like that.
Now, this is from Vox. I was going to get to this last week, but we ran out of time. Air pollution contributes to as many as 200,000 deaths per year in the United States. We were talking about what it does worldwide. It's in the millions. And in, I think in India, it's over 1 million. So it's just, crazy, because, that's a major health problem. By some estimates, the health and economic benefits of avoided air pollution on their own are enough to justify the transition to clean energy. Here. It's not just about saving the planet. It's about a lot of things that are better for us. A study published earlier this month in the journal Science of the Total Environment found that in California, every 20 zero-emission vehicles per 1,000 people in a given zip code led to a 3.2% drop in the rate of emergency room visits due to asthma. That's mind-blowing.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's hard evidence that, and it's unbelievable that we have it at this point, but the study, it seems quite conclusive, and it's been vetted.
Yeah, and what I'll mention here is it's sort of a long story, but I started driving to this local coffee shop recently, and I've never had the kind of job where I had to commute in rush hour traffic. I've never sort of had that, but there was a few cases in the last couple of weeks where I sort of just by coincidence happened to be driving during rush hour in the morning to this coffee shop that I like to go to. So there's about a 5-minute section of this drive where I'm basically in traffic, like slow-moving city rush hour traffic. And I just was amazed how much exhaust I was smelling all the time, to the point where I realized, I got to shut off air circulation, turn it on recirculated air when I do this drive, because I just was not used to breathing so much, pollution, tailpipe pollution.
Well, I'm just going to read you the last couple sentences here from the article. It says, what's interesting is that the researchers found this by studying actual air pollution levels and health outcomes rather than using models and simulations. These are not hypothetical benefits in the future. They are happening right now.
In a place like California and Norway, tons of electric vehicles already on the road. It's already making a difference. That's great.
Yeah, it's time for the lightning round. This is how we end the show every week, people. The fast-paced look at some of the headlines in clean energy and climate news. The Port of Singapore bans new fossil fuel harbor craft by 2030. Singapore has mandated that all new harbor craft be electric, capable of using B100 biofuels, or compatible with net zero vehicles or fuels such as hydrogen by 2030. It's a step forward, and this is the first sort of harbor that we've seen. We've seen the docks inside the harbor have to go zero-emission transport trucks for going around the harbor. So
Mhm.
this is now on the water. It's starting to spread. It's starting to spread. According to the International Maritime Organization, international shipping accounts for 3% of global greenhouse emissions, and it's growing. Volkswagen has officially selected St. Thomas, Ontario as the home for its first North American EV battery cell plant. So mention that because
Yeah.
it's a big one, and it's from where we are.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, there's waiting lists for a lot of electric vehicles if you want to buy them now, but Volkswagen has made a series of announcements lately, something like 200 billion in money that they're going to spend in the next few years on their EV pipeline, and that includes this massive battery cell plant here in Canada. This is apparently one of the biggest parts of this puzzle. And so, good on Volkswagen for putting their money where their mouth is.
Ford reveals an electric school bus based on the e-Transit cargo van. This is the highly popular electric transit version, the electric version of the Transit. Yeah, it's low to the ground, and it's very popular with deliveries, like short-haul, last-mile deliveries and things like that. This is the first Type A school bus package on an electric powertrain. So it's one of those short, stubby school buses that you see on the streets. It's electric, and it's a really cheap way of doing it, much cheaper than a regular school bus. Hell, you could probably put 2 of these out there for the same, 3 of them or 4 of them for the same price.
Yeah, and there was a story this week that, that Rivian is making electric delivery vans for Amazon, and we've talked about that before, and they've got a contract to deliver something like 100,000 of these by 2030. It's kind of a similar sized vehicle, but Rivian is looking to sell them to people other than just Amazon. So apparently they can make enough of them that they're no longer want to be exclusive. Right now they're exclusive. They only sell these to Amazon, but they're looking to sell them outside of that deal, which is, I think, a good sign.
Well, 100,000 Amazon vehicles by 2030 is going to keep them busy, but we'll see how they can ramp up. Ars Technica says an international team of researchers found that floating solar panels could provide over a third of global electricity. Panels on reservoirs can keep enough water for 30 million people from evaporating. So you remember 300 million people from evaporating. Water for 300 million people from evaporating. Yeah, you know how the water helps the solar panels because it keeps them cool. You lose efficiency after 25 degrees, which doesn't take much. When you're in the sun, it could be a lot cooler than 25 degrees, and you start to lose the efficiency of those panels, so that helps. And in hot climates, it helps even more by keeping that water from evaporating when the precious water. So that's very interesting. I'm taking this as mostly onshore, although I hear that offshore is a possibility as well. I don't know how that works because waves can be pretty big offshore, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. The BBC has decided not to broadcast an episode of Sir David Attenborough's flagship new series on British wildlife because of fears its themes of the destruction of nature would risk a backlash from Tory politicians and the right-wing press. Your thoughts, Brian Stockton?
David Attenborough is 96 years old. Did you know that?
Yeah, why are they screwing with him? He's really old.
He's an old guy. Let him say whatever he wants.
From Science Direct, rooftop solar could potentially produce 680 terawatts of solar electricity annually. And Brian, that is 24% of current electricity consumption in the world. Could come from rooftop solar, which is mind-blowing, actually, when you think about it. There it is. 24% of it's already there if you want it, I guess.
We can put panels almost anywhere. We can put them on roofs. We can put them on reservoirs. We can put them on lakes, maybe the ocean. We can put them anywhere, and we should.
In Europe, rooftop solar generates about 5% of the electricity demand. Not sure what it is in Australia. It's a bit better. So a company, Unoral Flash, unveiled this e-bike with 3 batteries. And, of course, the e-bike community is, what? 3 batteries? Why are you doing that? 2 was crazy. So this new bike comes with 3 batteries, but also, it goes 45 kilometers an hour, 28 miles an hour, has a range of 220 miles or 350 kilometers. That's a day trip in a car, although it would probably take 8 hours on a bike with pedal assist. So if you're helping along, if your pants don't wear out, and they probably would, you could ride 8 hours on that sucker. And it looks almost like a dirt bike. It doesn't look like a bike, but it,
Yeah. It sort of looks like a small motorcycle, but instead of, all the gasoline engine parts, there's just sort of 3 big chunky batteries.
And then you would charge up and continue on your way. I don't know. That would be hard. It would be hard to do, even as a young person, because your bum would get tired, especially if you're pedaling. Although my brother went to Michigan, hundreds and, thousands of kilometers once on his bike when he was a teenager. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And, he's done some crazy things like that, including biking from here to Winnipeg in 24 hours. And he was on the front page of the Weekender newspaper edition for our local newspaper. It's quite funny, the story. We have it in a box somewhere. And yes, he did wear out his pants. He couldn't walk to go to the bathroom. His legs wouldn't work. On that note, that is our show for this week. We thank you all for joining us. If you're new to the show, subscribe, because we'll send you a new podcast every week, come hell or high water. Take the time to contact us. We love hearing from you guys. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com or on SpeakPipe, speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel if you like visuals and pictures and special features. And I'm going to have lots of Bolt content going up. Maybe even some old Leaf content, because people love that. We get thousands and thousands of views tens of thousands of views. And thanks to all you people for supporting the show. If you're going to join us again next week, Brian, we're going to be here. See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.